to handle maybe the last couple of weeks of quarantine or even the summer. And maybe talking a little bit about, as parents, how are we doing and how are we handling this situation? Because it is challenging for everyone. So, Laura, Ms. Cuneo, would you like to add anything?
No, you pretty much said it all. You know, we in the counseling office have been for a few years, well, several years now, just trying to put a lot of focus, much needed focus on mental health. And, you know, this is a really good opportunity for us to do something different in a virtual environment, and maybe something we can continue when we're not here anymore, because this isn't forever. So, you know, but it's just good to, you know, we hear you guys, we hear parents and students and what their concerns are. And we just thought this would be a really good opportunity to, you know, give you a space and kind of go over some of those concerns that all of us are having in our own way, but especially concerns that are, you know, specific to a teenager and what they're going through, and all the questions and concerns that you're hearing at home. So thank you again for everyone being here today.
All right, so I'll hand it off to Mr. Garcia or Mr. Dr. Trevor Small.
I can start. So yeah, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Eddie Garcia from Insight Treatment. I am a substance abuse counselor, and I also oversee all the school support for the company. We do a lot of things like this, parent nights, teen education. We do a lot of outreach in those ways. We are an intensive outpatient program for teens and their families who struggle with mental health and addiction issues. Pretty much what that means is we offer therapy, group therapy, individual therapy, family therapy. The teenagers come in 4 times a week, and then once on the weekend when there's no quarantine, they do like an outing. But the therapy is within that time. The biggest distinction between, I'm gonna start this slide before I keep going. So the biggest distinction between us as an IOP, an intensive outpatient, is that the teenagers live at home. They live with their parents and they come to us for treatment. Other facilities are like residential, which is more care, where they are living there. That's like the biggest distinction. So we've been around for over 25 years. We have a location in Pasadena, Van Nuys, and we opened up one in the South Bay, and we are opening another one shortly in Santa Clarita as well. So we're kind of all over LA County. And yeah, I think that Trevor can take it from here.
Yes, that is perfect. And Eddie, what I realize is when, let me see if I can fix this now. When we went to full screen, and when we went to sharing the screen, it made it so that you're in control of the slides. And so sort of if we can do this like the old days, I don't know how many of you remember. Yeah, I'll make this sound like a bing. I don't remember how many of you remember that from school when you were in school, but the slide projector used to go bing and then they would turn the slide. I just dated myself. Okay, well, that's all right. My name is Dr. Small. I'm a clinical psychologist and I'm with Insight Treatment Centers. I am the director of clinical development, and I have been a psychologist in practice. I started seeing patients in 1988. And so I've been doing it a little while, and I work with adolescents and adults in lots of different ways. So if we go, there we go, perfect, thanks. So if we think about this time in our history, and for all of us as individuals here, really throughout the world, and if you think about typically how, especially in the United States, we developmentally look at change. For example, as we get ready to retire, we start to talk with our partner and our families about what it's going to look like to retire. We oftentimes will spend 2 to 3 years saying, well, will we travel? Will we get an RV and go across the United States? Will we do something such as take up gardening or take up salsa or whatever it is? So the couple, the family begins a conversation about how the change will occur, what will go on, and how things will look. We We right now, for many of you that have teenagers that are 11th and 12th graders, have been talking about a big transition, which is college. What is it going to look like transitioning from college? How is that going to feel? All those important things, what it's going to be like. Well, on March 17th or around March 17th, especially in California, we as individuals and as families were told, hey, listen, everything is going to change. We're going to have a different set of rules and a different set of requirements, and school's going to look different, and social interactions are going to look different. The world is going to look different, and we'll let you know when it's going to change. So the amount of time where typically we get ready for our kids to go off to college or get married or retire, developmental shifts we talk about for years, we had about 3 days to prepare. Some of us 2, some of us less. With that lack of time to talk about things, of course, we're going to see a reaction. All of us have had reactions. And teenagers, the way that they integrate information, the way that they've been struggling with information and the information that's coming in, we see a lot of them have had some difficulty in being able to take responsibility and in being able to follow through on the things that we've been asking of them. And that's because they're feeling possibly overwhelmed and concerned about all the things that are going on and all the things that have been going on and how their lives have changed. Because really, if you think about it, we are a goal-oriented organism. So, for example, I have two kids. One of them is one of them is a junior in college, and one of them is actually heading back east to go to prep school next year. But he is also a junior in high school. And so for those two guys, they have goals. They say, well, one of them says, well, I really want to be able to achieve this athletically or achieve this academically. We know that we're all working towards helping them get to that goal. Well, with the changes that have gone on, it's difficult to find a motivation towards that goal if you don't know how things are going to look next week or next month. Being able to find motivation, being able to feel social support, where right now all of the support that you have is through a television set or through a computer or through a phone, instead of being able to sit next to one of your close friends and who's having a tough time, or if you're having a tough time, and get a hug or hang out and just go to a movie or do those things that we typically have done as a way of managing some of the feelings that we might be feeling just on a typical day. So with that loss of social outlets, with the loss of physical activity, and with a reliance on computers and phones and tablets just on a day-to-day basis, what we're seeing is that the system of the adolescent is getting overwhelmed. We can click the slide if we want. Great. So one of the ways that as professionals and as parents, I think, that you see the greatest impact on kids that you're already seeing some externalization of who they are as individuals. So for example, if you have an incredibly social team and every weekend they're out and they're with their friends and they're going to movies and they're hanging out, doing all that fantastic stuff, and all of a sudden we've put new boundaries and guardrails around them, then we're going to notice that that's going to impact them a tremendous amount. My kids, as I mentioned, one of my boys is a competitive power lifter. And so he spends his time, in addition to being in college, lifting tremendous amounts of weight. Well, I don't have a tremendous amount of weight in my house. I have a couple of paint cans and a broomstick. So, things change for him tremendously. I can see the impact of that. My other son is a competitive hockey player. Right now, there's no ice. Well, there's ice in a freezer, but there is no ice for him to skate on. And for being 16 and skating since he was 5 days a week, this is a big change for him. So we see that impact in our kids that have been really physically active, those baseball players, those football players, those kids that haven't been able to get back out and have that athletic outlet. And of course, at Insight, probably Eddie, right, we see a bit more of this population are those kids that have struggled with substance abuse or mental health conditions in the past. And of course, this is not specific to adolescents. I think as a profession, all of us are very aware that the mental health impact of this particular environment and these very unusual conditions that we're all living in has exacerbated or made worse a lot of pre-existing conditions, because we've been relying back on old ways of coping because we're feeling overwhelmed. So if we can click that slide. And if anybody has a question, feel free to, I don't know how you would let me know, but Eddie might see a hand or something. Please, you're more than welcome to raise a hand or whatever
I can
you'd like
switch
to do
back
there.
to the chat if anyone does have.
No, if someone has a question, well, no, we're good. No, just
Okay.
all those
Okay.
great things about being a first experience insight. So if we go back to what's important, right? We know that there are certain things that are incredibly important to help provide a sense of stability and structure. All of us have a different integration of those factors that Eddie has listed there, which I think are great: academics, family, hobbies, social life, and mental health hygiene. And I think that the activities that all of our kids do fit into one of those categories, multiple categories at the same time. And as we look at the identity of our teenagers and as they grow, of course, as you all know, many of them start as athletes and end up as actors, and many of them that start as actors end up as athletes, or whatever we want to think about it. But everybody is different. And because everybody is different, this current environment and the current restrictions that have been placed on everybody for the past 8 weeks has impacted them in these 5 areas differently, but significantly. It's thrown things somewhat out of balance. So for example, for kids that had a very strong social life, those kids might have found their social life declined because they haven't had a chance to interact with their friends, but their academics and the academic pressures have increased, right? Their mental health hygiene might have lowered because they haven't had time to do the things that make them feel good, such as being able to have a successful date with a partner that they've been interested in, or have a really good a presentation in front of a bunch of friends in a classroom. But in each of those areas, we know that finding the balance of them in this new adaptation, and even more importantly, and this is something that we're going to touch on today, Eddie and I, is how we all sort of begin to come out of the cocoon that we've been in for the past 8 weeks. All of us have been in this incredibly tightly woven cocoon. And that cocoon has kept us safe, and it's kept us well, and it's allowed us as families to come together. Yes. But on the other side of that, it's also created a bit of a struggle for all of us to think about, well, how do we come out of our cocoon? Like, when is it safe? And how do we know how to navigate the world with these new restrictions and rules? How do these 5 factors, the academics, the family, the hobbies, etc., how do we modify and change those so that as the world grows and develops and asks us to adapt to stay safe and keep our families safe, how do we be mindful in our steps towards our new normal? So if we want to hit that slide right there. Yes. So how do we help our kids stay focused during these next, let's say, 6 weeks? Because it really is 6 weeks. I know school ends in 4 weeks, right? Is that right? Yeah, about 4 weeks. Okay. So if we think about the next 4 weeks as school is starting to end, and then the next 2 weeks as people are starting to get used to the summer and getting ready for summer school online, or some things that they're doing online, how do we help kids know that this is a process and not what it's going to be like for the rest of their lives? There's a great quote I came across that said that this is a chapter in our life and not the entire book. And sometimes being able to know that staying on task, feeling a sense of pride and mastery over your environment about what you're doing, and knowing that this is not always going to be the case, but you have to be able to stay safe. You have to be able to think through what you're doing, and being able to stay motivated these next 4 weeks will definitely help you as you look towards your senior year, your college year, whatever, however we want to think about it. Also being able to understand that you're not alone. You see, being in a stay-at-home state, if you think about it, in our generation and in the generation of probably anybody under the age of 70 or 65, a global change in the way you've been asked to behave hasn't really occurred to this level. For example, in World War II, we had to, well, not I, but my parents had to keep their lights off when they drove down the street, which has got to be a very interesting way to drive, but we'll just leave that alone for the purpose of this conversation. But they had to ration what they were going to have to eat. They had to be careful how they communicated and who they communicated with. Their jobs changed. The world changed. So our entire culture right now has never really gone through this before. Being able to explain to our teenagers that all of us have had to adapt, all of us have had to change, and everybody is learning how to adapt to this is really, really important. It's also really important to be able to keep in mind that we all have to have a little or slightly different expectations about what it is that we're doing. This light, goodness, very red. Well, we'll let it be. Anyway, so different expectations about what it is that we can achieve in our worlds. Because a lot of times we'll set out to say, okay, I'm gonna complete AP Physics, AP Bio, AP History, AP English, all of my AP exams, and I'm going to hit 5s on all of them. Everything is going to be fantastic. And then this happens, and we do need to modify our expectations. And we need to modify them in a way that says, I'm going to do well, but I'm also going to understand that remote learning is a little bit more difficult for me to get. I'm a better in-person learner. So I need to just be able to accept that, get support from my family, get support from my school, but also know that I can achieve some of those goals, but maybe not to the degree that I had hoped. If we can click the little slide thing in there. So I talked a bit ago about the change that all of us are experiencing in the world. And as adults, I think, well, as parents of teenagers, but as adults, I think we're becoming more and more aware of the impact of what this has had upon teenagers. But I think really being able to understand what and how their world has changed allows us to have really greater empathy when they start to show us some of those feelings and some of those thoughts that are really hard for them to hold on to. Many of the seniors, I'm sure, were looking forward to their senior prom. I don't know if the prom happened. I'm assuming no. No, okay. So we're looking forward to prom. We're looking forward to graduation. I remember the wonderful rite of passage as a kid, at the end of the school year, dumping the contents of my locker into the hallway. That was something I don't suggest I do that. I didn't tell my kids to do that. Please, no one should ever do that. This was back in the 1930s when I went to school, but I'm just kidding. But I mean, seriously though, there were rites of passage of being in high school that right now, the adolescents that are living in our homes, that are our children, are not going to have. Being able to provide those in whatever way is possible is really, really important. So it might be that they're not able to have a prom, but allow them to get dressed up and have an experience of what that would be like, so that they're with their friends sort of on Zoom or whatever it is. Being able to have a graduation ceremony in the home, those sorts of things provide a sense of normalcy and a senior year experience. We talk about this because being a senior is about preparing the transitions of moving forward towards your freshman year of college. So taking some steps as parents with the guidance of your school counselors, with the guidance of the school, about what it'll look like to move forward and prepare them for their freshman year of college, and how they can look back on this and say, well, I went through my senior year and I missed some stuff, but I also did some really cool stuff that I maybe normally wouldn't have been able to do. And of course, what it's going to be like when we come out of our cocoons is so important for teenagers. And it's really hard because I think we as adults don't know. We don't know what a new normal is going to be like. I personally don't know the next time I'm going to be able to go to Staples Center and watch the Kings play. For me, that's really hard. I think I saw 95% of their games this year until the season ended, and I had to really realize, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to see the Kings play until I don't know when. right? And being able to help our teenagers to understand that not knowing doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It just means that we can't really put a push pin on when that date is going to be. If we can hit the thing there. How am I doing on time, Eddie?
You're good.
Good. Okay. Am I on my last slide, or do I have one more?
Not. I think one more possibly.
One more. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. So, if we can go into a little bit of the clinical realm just for a second, I think that as parents, when we have asked professionals or teachers or our friends, why is my teenager acting this way? Like, they come downstairs and they're happy and they're wonderful, and then literally they turn around and they become like a different person. I don't understand what's going on here. Well, of course we know that parts of the brain, and that part of the brain that really deals with impulse and deals with the ability to sort of navigate complicated situations in an adaptive manner, doesn't fully develop until the age of 25. I have joked with my colleagues before that I have had some individuals in my practice that I don't believe this is ever formed, and they're in their 50s, but we'll leave that again alone for a different day. But the ability to navigate situations, the ability to know that, well, let me put it this way. I think that adolescents in general see things as either on or off, or in other words, in a very binary way, that it's hard for them to see things in the gray. And so it's either that I can go out and I can be with my friends and I can do what I want, or I have to stay at home and not be able to do the things that I really want to do. Being able to show them how to be in the gray and be comfortable in the gray is really, really important, and being patient as they struggle with that idea. Because the loss of the high school experience is pretty significant. It's pretty major. And struggling with those feelings, as I'm sure all of you have been watching over the past 8 weeks, has been a challenge not only for the adults in your life, but especially for your kids. Being able to, and I want to just jump to the next slide if that's okay, Eddie.
Yeah.
Can I go to the next slide real quick? Thanks. So something an insight that we are really, we believe is really, really important is being able as a family to view that every member of the family is as important as the individual that walks through our door to get treatment. And I say that because as a team, as a family, that there is an opportunity for all of you to come up with a set of rules and a set of ideas and policies to stay safe in this environment and to transition out of this environment as a collective. Teenagers in general, as I'm sure you've probably noticed, for those of you, I think everybody here has a teenager. Teenagers in general do not like to be told what to do. They like to know why, they like to know when, they like to know how. Sometimes they like to point out to us that that we in fact are not following the specific ideas that we are proposing that they follow. But in general, they want to feel a part of the problem-solving process. And that is so important. And so as a family, as soon as really you find yourselves able to do this is sit down and say, well, what is it going to be like? Like, how do we think things are going to be when this is over? How do we think as these restrictions are lifted and we move closer and closer to a vaccine, or closer and closer to more testing, or however we define it as a family, what feels right to you? And I bet you, that your teenager is going to have an incredibly insightful set of responses as to what it is they think would be helpful for the family. Being able to integrate their responses into the family rules and policies, I think, and an insight we believe, is so important, because the more they feel that they're a part of the process, the more your buy-in to that process, the more they're going to follow it, the less resistance you're going to get from it, and the more compliance that you're going to get as you ask for them to help with some of the rules and boundaries, maybe with younger siblings or with grandparents or with peers that want them to come out and do things that the family goes against some of the family rules and ideas.
Trevor, may
Yeah.
I say something? I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's so important.
Yeah.
Because they're feeling a sense of they have no control over their environment, over their situation. I love what you just said, because that gives them a sense of what they can control, is being able to collaborate as a family. That gives them a sense of control over their environment, which they feel they have no control over. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all of us are feeling, in one way or another, a lack of control with our environment. And I think that's seen in the way that our jobs have changed. It's seen in the way that our roles have changed, how the economy has changed. Everything right now is different. So being able to validate that experience for our kids, being able to talk to them both as parents but also as individuals going through this with them, helps it become a collective decision of rules and ideas versus, oh, my parents are telling me I can't go out, right? So um, at Insight also, we talk about this idea of being of service. I am a huge fan, I know Eddie is too, and many of you I'm sure are too, of being of service. It provides a real touchstone to why all of us are doing this. So for example, if there's a grandparent, if there is an older relative, a neighbor who would benefit from their lawn being mowed, or their pool being cleaned, or their garbage being brought in or out, or something like that, being of service, the teenager feels more of a sense of pride, of identity in helping people get through this just like they're getting through it. It gives a sense of, hey, I'm doing something to help everybody versus this sucks, I'm sitting in my room and throwing pencils at the ceiling, right? And the last idea I'm going to just bring up before I pass this off to Eddie is this idea of social distancing with friends. Teenagers, oh, well, all of us are social beings. Coming up with, as a family, what feels to be a comfortable set of rules and ideas about social distancing is really, really important. And make sure that there is buy-in from your teenagers about it, because as restrictions are lifted, social distancing will be always encouraged until this is changed. And so why is it important to wear a mask? How do you wear a mask? How far do you have to stay from your friends if you're going to have a sort of a kickback in the park? All those sorts of things are really good ideas to plan out before they happen, so that everybody knows what the expectations are versus, oh yeah, we had a kickback, we all just sort of sat together and within 4 inches of each other, something like that. So if there's no questions, Eddie, I think I'm going to pass it off to you if that's all right.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna check real quick. There is some questions. Thank you, Eddie. Question: what are your thoughts on handling the situation with a child that has AD, attention deficit, and struggles with learning modality that is incompatible with how one learns?
Oh, such a great question. So along the ideas of ADHD, of course, all of us are different learners, right? So some of us are kinetic learners, some of us are auditory learners, some of us are visual learners. If you're a kinetic learner, so for example, if you learn through sort of moving puzzle pieces or moving things into directions and understanding that if I remove this piece from that, then this is what this will look like. Or if I'm incredibly creative and I need to sculpt, or I need to be in an environment where there's access to a kiln or whatever it is, this is a really, really difficult period right now. Because if you're not a great auditory learner and a great visual learner, and you do struggle with attention, then you're going to have to come up with some skills that are specific to the way that you learn, that help you to feel a sense of pride in what you're doing. So for example, Eddie, right at Insight, one of the things that we do when we're doing our groups, that of course we have people there, most of the people there are in person, but we have some people that are remote due to health conditions. And so for the people that are remote, we do things like providing a quiet environment that's away from any distractions. We take away the phone, we take away a tablet if they don't need the tablet, if they can just use a computer screen. We make sure that there's good lighting. We make sure that there's no interruptions. We make sure that there's frequent and consistent breaks. All of those things are very, very important. And because one of the things that happens, of course, as many of you have probably noticed when you're doing a Zoom meeting, is that at some point you begin to see what I call the sort of the forehead slant. I don't know all of you if you've seen it, but it's this. And basically what it is, it's everybody starting to look at their phones. And so people's, heads start to go down, and then they're looking at the phones, and then you see maybe a little movement from the shoulder, which means that they're going through their Instagram and they're gone, right? And so what we want to do is we want to try to provide those breaks. We want to try to maximize the opportunities for learning and make sure that the screen is in front of them as much as possible. But with a realistic expectation that with someone with an attention issue, they're not going to be able to sit through 45 minutes of lecture versus wanting to break it up into 20 minutes at a time.
All right, awesome. We'll make some more time for questions at the end. Let me get back to the PowerPoint. And thank you for bearing with me with the technical issues. Just how we all have to adapt to the world and everything going on. We're having to adapt to the use of technology and Zoom and all of this. Okay, so back to this. Trevor made some great points, and he touched a lot already on how to find balance. But here at Insight, we always try to give a lot of tips and a lot of help on, finding the balance. And really, we're huge on structure because, the teams that we get in our program, usually they lack that structure or that ability to self-discipline or hold themselves accountable. That's part of the reason why they might need some extra help. So, just some real quick, simple stuff. It's like structure your day. Like, what time are you waking up? What time are you starting your assignments? All of that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm sure you guys hear a lot of this already, so I don't want to be too repetitive because this is some simple stuff. Set obtainable goals, like set practical goals. With goals, it's really important to have them be tangible. Like, is this completable or not? Just kind of stay away from the abstract, because when you go into the abstract, it's like, well, I kind of think I fulfilled that. It's easier to keep it black and white when it comes to goals. Like, is this did you accomplish this or did you not? Creating a workstation, that was kind of mentioned right now by Trevor. Setting time for fun activities. So within that structure of your day, make time for fun stuff as well. Spending time as a family, we're huge here about having like a family dinner, whether it's once a week, if that's all that's allowed, or if it's every day. Cut the cell phones during that time. Limit the use of technology in general. And obviously, don't forget about physical exercise. I remember when the governor first talked about the stay-at-home order, he was like, hey, you guys should still go for walks. You guys should still go hiking and all of this, because it is important, and that information's out there. Like, the more you move your bodies, the more physical exercise or physical movement you do, the better you're going to feel. You're going to burn energy. You're going to burn calories. If you have a lot of extra energy, if you have like for myself, I'm a very high-strung person. I have a lot of energy. I haven't been able to go to the gym recently, so I definitely feel that change. So I have to do other things. I have to find other ways to do it. And let me go to the next slide. Working together, collaborative parenting. Trevor also touched on this a lot, which is great. This is really about the parents and the teen with your child coming together and finding what works, working together to set those goals, set your intention for the day, set your goals for the day. For parents, it's important to be willing to compromise when it's appropriate. So, are they working hard? Are they putting in the time necessary, the time that's appropriate? And if so, maybe it's okay to allow some flexibility, make sure the priorities, the obligations are met, and then allow some room for other things to do. We're huge on this at Insight as well. We are a family-based program, so we work a lot with the family, and some kids need a little bit more slack because the parents want a lot from them, and sometimes the parents need to push a little bit more. So it really changes from family to family and from teenager to teenager. One thing that we talk a lot about here at Insight as well is holding the power. As a parent, you're supposed to be the responsible one. You're supposed to be the one to teach them how to be responsible, how to take care of themselves, how to do the right thing. So it's the parents' role to set the boundaries and to enforce the rules. Like here at Insight, we set up contracts. Like, these are the boundaries, these are the rules. If you break them, if you don't follow them how it's written, this is what the expectation is, and these are the set consequences. It's really helpful for teenagers who like pushing the boundaries and who like breaking the rules, having those set expectations beforehand. So when the rules do get broken, if they do get broken, it's already set in motion, like what happens next. Having structure allows teens to be safe. What we believe is that, teenagers, they want to break the rules. They're kind of rebellious, but having that structure makes them feel safe. Having knowledge of, these are the boundaries, this is what I'm allowed to do, this is what I'm not allowed to do. It really gives them a sense of like, okay, well, I know what I need to do, I know what I shouldn't do, and that can be very helpful. Teens ultimately feel cared about and loved, even if they don't like the rules. If you're able to do this in an effective manner, your teen will understand, like, it's coming from a good place. It's coming because you're cared about. It's coming because your parents love you. They might not see it that way initially. It might take them a little bit, or they might not admit that. But teens that are allowed to roam free and do as they want, who sometimes they that's okay. Sometimes there's some kids that they're able and they're willing to do the right thing, but a lot of times teenagers like pushing the rules, they like pushing the boundaries. So it's really important to hold the power as a parent and keep that structure. Okay, so red flags. These are the things to keep an eye out. These are the things that okay, maybe there's something else going on. Maybe I need to pay more attention to what's going on, because I'm seeing these changes in behavior, in sleeping habits, in friend groups, loss of interest in things they once enjoyed, acting out behaviors such as substance use, anger. For those who struggle with mental health, they can act out in many different ways. They can act out in self-harm, issues around food and eating, shoplifting. There's a lot of different ways to act out. And sometimes when the teenagers act out, it might just be a teenager being a teenager. But if you see a lot of these red flags, if they have a longer history of acting out, then that's when we kind of, refer to, okay, maybe you need some more help. Maybe you need some more structure. Okay. And then, so most importantly, as a parent, you got to pay attention. Ask questions, look for the red flags, listen to what they say. Don't be judgmental. This one's important because with like collaborative parenting and having an open dialogue with your teenager, being open to communication, it's important that they know they can come to you and you're not going to automatically judge them. You're not automatically going to get mad because they did something wrong. It's really important to be able to manage your own anxieties, your own concerns, and your own fears that come up when your child makes a mistake, when they break a rule, when they're not on top of their classwork, or they're not as interested in their sports. It's important to understand what's going on with them, where are they coming from, and not automatically think, it's the end of the world, or I need to give them, I need to sit them down and give them a lecture on why this is important. As teenagers, a lot of times they already know what you're trying to get through in that lecture. If you try to lecture them, they already kind of understand that knowledge. And part of the teenage process and like being a young adult is, making your own mistakes, coming to your own solution and learning from it. And it's important to allow the teenagers some room to do that. So again, offer help, offer support, be collaborative. Okay, what can you do? Like I said, allow them the room to be teens, make their own decisions, learn from it. When you communicate and you're talking with your teen, it's really important to let them take the conversation in the path they want to take. It's really important to make yourself available on their time. What we hear a lot here at our program is like, oh, he's always wanting to come and talk to me at like 8, 9 p.m., 11 p.m. When I want to go to sleep, or when I get home from work, like I want to like decompress and I want to relax for a minute before talking with them. With teenagers, it's like when they want to talk, they're going to want to talk to you. And if you don't make yourself available in that window of opportunity, you might not get it again, and they might not talk to you. They might reach out to a friend, they might do something else. They might reach out to someone else, and that's good. But as a parent, it's important to make yourself available to them. If you're trying to build that relationship with your child, with your teenager, ask questions about their interests. What are you interested in? What do you like? Really important, with their feelings and concerns, validate them. Like if they're feeling sad, if they're feeling angry, if they're feeling however they're feeling, if they're thinking a certain way, it's important to validate it and be like, I understand where you're coming from. And many times, if you just follow them along their conversation, they can come to their own conclusion and see that maybe their feelings and thoughts are irrational, they're not logical, and they can come to those conclusions on their own without, having to intrude in that process as a parent and tell them, no, that's wrong, this is right. Because that can be very, that can take a lot of the validation away from them. Make time to spend together. We kind of touched on that as well before. Seeking professional help. If you need some assistance, if there's more issues, if you don't really understand what's going on, seek professional help, whether it's a therapist, a rabbi, a priest, any religious authority, or we also make ourselves available. We have some resources. We'll get to that at the end, but we do have resources available if you want to contact us and speak to us. So when do teens need additional help? When is it important to seek professional help? What we see is, the teenagers that usually come into our program, they have this long history of struggling, of having emotional pain. Maybe they were diagnosed with anxiety or depression or ADHD at a young age. It caused them to feel different. It caused them emotional pain. And what we start to see is that their emotional world, their emotions become intolerable. And sometimes they can manage that for some time on their own, by isolating, by not talking about it, just repressing those feelings and not talking about them. And that can last, a year, 2 years, 3 years. And then a lot of times what we see is that they start to act it out. Usually, around 13, 14, 15 is when we start to see these teenagers start to act out. And this is as a result of their emotional world becoming intolerable. They're in a lot of pain and they're able to manage it for some time. And then after a while, they can't do that anymore. And they feel the need to express that pain, to like act it out, whether it's by using substances, self-harm, eating disorders, cutting, self-harm, suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts. There's a lot of different ways to act them out. So what we do as a program, what we believe is that these teenagers need to be in a group. They need to be in a community setting with other teenagers who understand them. And what we see many times is that these teenagers come into our program and they feel a loss of hope. They feel there's no point, no one can help me, nothing's gonna change, so why even try? And then they come into this community and they see other teenagers who they relate to, who maybe they have similar issues. Maybe they have a similar family dynamic, and they start to relate to them. They start to connect to them. And in that process, they see that things are getting better for other teenagers with those same issues, and they start to see a sense of hope. And that sense of hope is what we try to instill in the teenagers and in our program, in our treatment, and build on with this community setting. You know, we like to use the phrase, it takes a village. You know, it takes the group, it takes the community to come together and help each other and lean on each other. So when one person is struggling, they have other people they can go to. When a parent or a teen as well, you know, if a parent is struggling, they can reach out to other parents who have been there and who understand what the process and what's going through, you know, their emotional world, their thought process. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. Here is some resources. I will add these to the chat, but this is just resources available to everyone. You know, the teen line, that's for teenagers, the text and call line where they can talk with other teenagers. NAMI, that's the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Any mental health issues, they can offer assistance. The Suicide Prevention Hotline, the PMR team, or used to be called the PET team. That's for anyone struggling with maybe like suicidal ideation. Instead of calling 911, they come and they send like a psychiatrist and a psych team to for the crisis. And then the crisis text line. It's like the text line. It's like the teen line, but for anyone, not just teenagers. And then some resources we have available. So we have 2 time slots every week available for you to hop on a Zoom call on Tuesdays and ask questions to myself and a therapist. It's not a group therapy, it's a meeting for support for parents with a clinician. Also, on Fridays, we have available a hotline from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. If you have any questions for a therapist, you can call that line, and that's more discreet and intimate, you know, if you don't feel comfortable with the group setting of the meeting. And call us, that's my phone number, that's my direct line, and that's our admissions line. And that is everything. Let me add those 2 files to the chat and you guys can download them. If you have any questions at this time, please ask.
I want to say something's resonated with me, grief and loss. So our students are experiencing tremendous amounts of grief and loss right now. And I think it's impacting them in a way that we may not understand. And it's showing up in signs of lack of motivation, signs of maybe depression, maybe not clinical depression, but maybe they're staying in their room a lot, but they're angry, they're frustrated. Some of them are saying to me, why should I even try? So I just want to, I want to emphasize and help parents be aware of how much that grief and loss is impacting our students right now. So they're having this feeling of losing their semester and all the rites of passage, and they're being asked to do all these things in school. And it's a very difficult time for a lot of them, not all students, but for a lot of students. So that was just something that resonated with me.
You know, Eddie brought up this great idea of community or tribe. So if we think about it as human beings, we function in tribes. And what we do is we lean on our tribe for support. And our tribe may be called many things. It may be called a team. It may be called a class. It may be called a group. We may come up with other inventive ways of describing our tribe. But our tribe provides us with support. And we need that tribe because it gives us different opportunities to hear different perspectives about what we're doing. And as parents, we have a tribe. It's called our parent group, right? So all of us as parents of kids in schools, we form natural tribes. With this current environment, our tribe has been split into a virtual tribe. And although teenagers are used to this method of communication, it isn't the same as real life interactions. And so the loss of so many developmental milestones for teenagers is tremendous. And being able to talk about them, being able to in many ways mourn the loss of those, being able to say, listen, I get it.
Mhm.
I know how important prom is, and I am so sorry that prom isn't happening. And I hope that really soon we'll be able to create an opportunity for you to have something like that. But I also get that it didn't happen for you, and I get why you'd be really angry and really sad, and I get it. Just being able to recognize that loss gives them a chance to say, well, normally my friends, my tribe might provide me with that validation, but that my parents are doing that, it feels like it's hitting the good spot, and I can feel a little bit like I might be able to release some of those feelings out. That they're not just, for example, my parents aren't just seeing me really angry, but they're trying to understand what it is that's driving my anger. And that really is, as parents, really hard, because when our kids come to us and they look, for lack of a better term, pissed, or if they're really trying to get on our last nerve, because we're also going through lots of mourning and loss of lots of things we like to do, lots of developmental things we've had in mind that we're not able to do. Being able to step aside from them and be there for them provides them with a great sense of validation. And I'm sure the counselors, I'm sure the teachers are giving as many props and celebrations and opportunities for recognition. And the more of those that you have, it does soften the blow a bit. But yes, mourning and loss and grief of this year, of the past few months, and the next couple, hopefully just a couple, is important to do.
I think, anger is a secondary emotion, right? That's something, the what's happening because of the anger is something to always look at. That's always anger is a result of being hurt or sad or something else.
Absolutely.
So if you're seeing anger, it's because there's an underlying feeling or emotion of sadness and hurt.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. And also to know, some kids are externalizers, some kids are internalizers. So for example, you might have a teenager who's really mad about missing the fact that he didn't get to go to States this year, and is in an argument and punches a hole in a wall, right? And you say, my son would never do that. What the heck is going on here, right? This is so different than I would have ever expected. Or you might have a son who usually is really chatty and really verbal, and all of a sudden is sitting in their room and not talking and watching Netflix all day and not really engaging in anything. But it's really about knowing what type of kid you have and being able to provide support to where they are in that manner. Also being able to recognize, Eddie mentioned a really important thing about physical exercise. So many of our teenagers rely on hours and hours a week of exercise. It's the outlet for that anger, for the feelings, for all the hormones, for all that energy. With the loss of those, with that exercise, the loss of the exercise, the feelings have nowhere to go but out of their mouth. And sometimes they can be a little bit volcanic. So just being able to understand, I get what you're saying. I appreciate you're angry, but let's sort of talk about it in a way that we can work something out versus, have us not understand one another.
mm-hmm. Wow, this has been wonderful and great. I wonder if anyone else has any questions for Eddie Garcia or Dr. Small.
And again,
Can you hear me okay? I had something I just noticed listening to you about the two sides of this. In the Times this morning, they had an interview on some college seniors some high school seniors who had missed the rest of their baseball. And as you know, baseball is a game that teaches you failure. If you hit, 1 out of 3 times, you're a tremendous success. And I just love the way they put this. It's just an interview. One of the kids said on sports being canceled, quote, "It's just tough because it's all come out of the blue. We weren't expecting anything to be putting the season to a halt. Everything we had been working for, all the summers we had been working hard. It's just gone now, and we can't do anything about it. But then on the other side of it, this is what he said. This is the same kid. You know, how he's moved on. And I'm done as soon as this is, I just look at it as life. Things happen, we have to move forward. These things shouldn't stop us from achieving what we can possibly, you know, what we possibly can in the future. And I just thought, you know,
Yeah,
there's something we can take from that.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's great.
that's beautiful.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
these kids can teach us a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Hmm. And I think as parents, checking our emotions and how they're consciously or unconsciously being projected onto our kids too, because we're in a state also. It's very, I mean, we have a lot of responsibilities financially and for their future. And so we also might be projecting a little bit of that anxiety that we're having that onto our kids. And so it's important as parents to sort of keep that in check as we're talking to our kids. And if you know, you don't want to force a conversation too, if people are upset and angry, then that's the time to say, you know what, it's too much right now. Let's both of us step away. And when we're calmer, we'll come back to the conversation. Nothing gets solved when two people are angry.
Mhm.
And so that's a really good teachable moment.
I have a question. Hi. Sorry,
Hi.
I popped in late to this meeting because I was on another Zoom meeting. So I don't know if you've covered any of this, but my kids have been fine for the online learning, and that's been great. Now I'm looking more towards summer, and I don't even know if you covered that, but what the summer days look like when there's no camp and there's no structure, and how to put structure in their lives without having to hammer it over their head every day. Okay, no, you're supposed to do this at this time. And I mean, I'm a pretty mellow parent, but I also, you know, don't want them to be on their phones all day and doing nothing else. And what do we do with these kids in the summer? I mean, obviously we're active family, so we're going to swim and hike and do all those things. And we've planned an RV trip, but you know, the days are long. So
Yes, the days can feel very long during the summer. You know, I can definitely commiserate with you. You know, as I mentioned, my son, one of my boys plays ice hockey, so he was literally supposed to be back east right now, getting ready to go, you know, for the season there and to play and to practice and be gone. So all of a sudden that changes entirely. We talk about this idea of collaborative parenting as a group, as a parental group, as a family, coming together and developing what everybody wants the summer to look like. Having a buy-in from your kids and having a buy-in from especially your teenagers will make your summer go much more smoothly than you saying, okay, I'm going to enroll you in robotics camp from 9 to 11, and then you're going to do a sketching camp from 11 to 1, and then a culinary school through, you know, a Culinary Institute of America from 1 to 3, and then from 3 to 4 you'll have a break, and then from 4 to 6 you're going to do a coding camp, right? No, not happening. Guaranteed they're sleeping until 2, getting up, having breakfast. Maybe by 4 they turn on PlayStation. Okay, so what are they interested in doing? And combining what they're interested in doing with what feels to be consistent with the family goals, rules, and norms, and having that buy-in, you'll have much more compliance, and you'll also have teenagers that are motivated to get up and do what they want to do. So if your son or daughter is really into robotics and you found this amazing robotics camp through Harvard University that's on Zoom, you say, listen, this is a great opportunity. Do you want to check it out? If you're interested in it, why don't you bring me some information about it, right? Have them take a role in bringing you material and data about what they're interested in, because they're going to have more buy-in than if you hand them a pamphlet and say, hey, this looks like a great robotics camp, right?
So would you definitely recommend having them have some online activity, you know, a few days a week that gives them some structure, as opposed to just, you know, I mean, my kids have a lot of passions, and I guess I could try and find something I just don't want to, like you're saying, I definitely don't want to overschedule them, but I also want them to have something to look forward to and some sort of structure. So that actually sounds like a really good idea. Maybe trying to enroll them in some sort of like online theater camp. I'm hoping a lot of these camps that we were going to send our kids to will now do something online instead. So that's a good idea.
They will all be online. They will absolutely, anything you were interested in, I guarantee those people have transitioned to online platforms. And I love the idea of an RV trip. And I love the idea of being able to say to our kids, you know what, listen, why don't we plan something for the end of August? Because by the end of August, we'll have a better idea as to what everything's going to look like. What can we all plan as a family to give everybody an idea as to that there is light at the end of this particular tunnel, and that our lives, this moment in everybody's life is really just a blip compared to the years and years and years that we'll be doing many, many other things. And so giving it an idea of perspective. Yes, this is going to be a couple more months, a few more months. Let's really plan a fun RV trip to Sedona in August. I think that'll be so great, right? So doing those things help give kids a sense of hope.
That's a great question. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? I want to respect everyone's times. It's 8 o'clock, so.
Also, please remember, don't forget about the resources I sent out. So that's 2 different time slots on Tuesdays and Fridays. Fridays is a hotline where you can call and speak to one of our therapists and ask any questions, address any concerns. And then Tuesdays, we have an online parent support meeting via Zoom from 12 to 2. So feel free to utilize those, share those with your fellow parents. Yeah, they're there for you guys to use. So we want to be helpful. Yeah.
And it's on our website too, under the Wellness Week. We have it on our website also. So. Okay, well, if everyone is good, I want to thank the families that came and showed up. It is being recorded, and we will be able to have it for other family members. So if you'd like to tell other people to go on the website, and they'll be able to find the recording there. Now, I know not everyone was able to attend, so I just want to thank Eddie and Dr. Small so much for being here. I got a lot out of it, and I hope you did too. Thank you, and it's good to see faces. So I really appreciate that. And everyone take care, hang in there.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks for having us. Thank you so much.
I'll take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Oh, bye.